Hey guys, it's Grand Admiral Thrawn, and I am finally back with another Black Series review. I'm sorry that it's taken so long for me to make one of these. I've just had a lot of other videos I've been working on, like Hunger Games videos. But anyway, I'm finally back with a Black Series review, and since it's been such a long time since I did one of these, I knew I had to do a very important character from Star Wars. So I picked Fingrin D'an, a character that even if you don't know his name, you know the character. And I think what I like the most about this figure is that he actually he recaptures the feeling of when you're watching A New Hope and they walk into Mos Eisley. Like, if you display this figure, it actually recaptures that feeling for you. And I think that's really cool. And I'm going to go into all the detailing and features they gave this figure, which will help me explain to you why I think they recapture that feeling. So for right now, I'm going to move his box off to the side, and we're going to mainly talk about the figure. So this Fingrin D'an figure is really good because he looks identical to Fingrin D'an, but at the same time you could have him be anybody else from the Modal Nodes, which is his band. I actually Googled the name of his band for this video. Anyway, so I'm going to take his accessory out for now. I will come back to that because it does play a big part in it. But one of the things I like the most about this Fingrin D'an is simply they capture the design of Fingrin D'an. Not just his head, but on the entire body. For example, they have his boots, his pants being just gray pants, black boots, and a black long sleeve shirt. And then they capture the alien aesthetic of him with his face, which I will be covering soon, his hands, which are in very good molds for if he was playing an instrument, and just even the pants, for example, the gray pants here, they have these lines of detail and just they capture the detail of this guy playing a band here. His shirt, how it's tucked in and everything, that works very well. And then you move on to the important stuff, like his hands, for example, and how they're in the right pose for when he's playing his instrument, but also they capture the look of his alien hands. That looks very nice in how they did that. And then on his other hand, it's the same thing, but a bit of a different mold, but it's still very similar. They did a very good job on that. But where they excel is at the head of Fingrin D'an, because the Cantina band just has such a unique design, and I love that they recaptured it with Fingrin D'an, of how his head is big, but his eyes are down low, and they even gave him a little mouth hole for you to actually plug his instrument into the mouth, which is an amazing feature that I want to talk more about. But on the back of his head, you can see all the little wrinkles around his neck and area. You can see that he's wearing a turtleneck with his shirt, of how it comes up around his neck and covers that. That's really cool. And I just really like what they did on how they captured the design of Fingrin D'an here. But now, if you move on to his accessory, or one of three, you can see that they really did a good job on his instrument because it looks exactly like the instrument that Fingrin D'an plays in the cantina. I am not actually going to be playing that music because I don't want my video getting copyrighted. But anyway, so they did a really good job of capturing the design of it, and it actually it fits very well into his hands. That's something I love to point out here, that you can have him hold it with both hands. That's something that not even Jedi get the treatment of sometimes, okay? But Fingrin D'an, you can make it that he's holding it with both hands and that his instrument fits into his mouth hole that they gave the figure here. That is something they don't even give Jedi, but Fingrin D'an gets that treatment, which is just amazing to me. Anyway, so I do really like this. The little tube thing that he connects into his mouth, it's plastic, you can move it around, so that way if you have it at an angle, like he's doing a solo or something, he can play it like that. But yeah, that's only one of the three accessories they gave this figure, and there's a reason for that. You can actually get the entire band from the Cantina if you buy 3 of Fingrin D'an and 1 of the other figure, which I forget the name of right now. But the point is that for Fingrin D'an, they gave him 3 instruments that you can pick between to decide which member of his band this is, which is a really smart idea. So that way you don't have to buy all 4 of them, because that's just insane. Nobody's going to buy all 4 of this guy. But if you just buy 3 of this guy, and then the 4th guy who comes with the unique instrument, then you get the whole band, which is actually a really creative idea. So I'm going to real quick cover the other two instruments. They look just like how they do as well, and they also fit into Fingrin D'an's hands very well, and the mouthpieces work just like the big one that I have him using, because that's the one on the box. But yeah, they fit into his hands very well, and they have very unique designs. They're pretty cool, and I like that. That's the one, and here's the final one, which fits into his hands. I think it might actually fit into his hands better than the one that I use with him when I want it to be Fingrin D'an. Alrighty, so yeah. Anyway, that's all three of his accessories, and I've already covered the figure a bit, so I'm going to talk about the box real quick, and then I'll come back for my final thoughts on this Fingrin D'an figure. Alright, so I actually love the picture they picked here, because it's a perfect picture to capture the Cantina band, and if you look up in the top corner, they have 3 out of the 4 members of the modal nodes, which is really cool. And it's just like, it fits very well with A New Hope. I like that A New Hope has orange, because at the time it wasn't like every single box was either blue, red, orange, or green. So it still works with A New Hope because the orange hasn't been used as much as the other colors have. So I really like that. Fingrin D'an is number 4 for A New Hope. That's pretty cool that he's actually number 4 in the wave. And then on the back of his box, you get the same picture that you have on the side, but a little zoomed in, and a little information about Fingrin D'an, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so I actually am a fan of these boxes probably the most. I do like the ones that we've gotten recently where they're perfectly squared off, and they fit just like that. I do like those boxes, but I do really like the wall art design of how you line them all up like this. Anyway, yeah, this is a pretty good box for a really good figure. Now for my final thoughts on Fingrin D'an. There it is. I think this is an amazing figure that really could help if you're a collector of Black Series, or just like a Star Wars collector in general. If you want a cool A New Hope Fingrin D'an figure, or just something that feels Star Warsy, this figure recaptures the feeling of when you walk into Mos Eisley. As such, I'm going to be giving him a 10 out of 10. I almost always give figures 10 out of 10s, but that's just because Black Series does an amazing job with most of them. But yeah, so Fingrin D'an, 10 out of 10 figure, I would recommend. I actually did not buy 3 of him plus the 4th guy. I only got the one Fingrin D'an figure. I don't know if I ever will buy the other 3, but I don't know. It could happen, it might not. But anyway, Fingrin D'an figure, 10 out of 10. It's very creative, and it helps you capture that feeling. So I would recommend that you get him. This is Grand Admiral Thrawn signing off, and I look forward to our next encounter in my next video. Hopefully it doesn't take so long for me to do another Black Series review.